regional access and the green is, right? So what you can see, or maybe you can't quite see, is like, yeah, the small guys use it, but really not a lot, because probably they're focusing on getting as much out of the farmers market. But it's really these middle-sized farms, right? And really, I guess you'd call it a farm, right? Because this is 500,000. I guess they're small, but relatively speaking, there's a couple biggies that use it a lot. There's also a couple really big ones that use it a little, right? But that gets some to regional. Also wants to make sure they have particular products that maybe they can't get from other local producers. So, okay. And so what we're able to do is get specific financial information on how regional spends their money, as well as how the farms that they serve spend their money. And we can estimate impacts from an expansion of demand for regionals, for the food hub products, and say, this is, I believe this is for every dollar expansion in demand for the food hub products, here's who benefits, right? Who do you think benefits the most? These are the farms that sell to the food hub, duh, right? But there's all these other sectors as well, depending on what regional buys, right? They also buy a lot of processed food products and sell. And remarkably, so it's a lot less here, remarkably, they can't get enough local processed product to meet the demands of their buyers. So, you know, it's probably half as much as impact as to their farmers. So we can account for that. We can also be wary of, because we surveyed their customers and said, if you bought more regional, would you just buy more regional product? And they said, probably not. We'd probably buy less from our distributor, right? Makes sense? So we also account, this thing is negative for a reason, is this is reflecting reductions in spending in other sectors, right? So the total impact is the sum of all these. You overstate it if you don't think about the countervailing effect of green star buyers. Okay, really fast. Rural-urban linkages. We're also working with Grow NYC Green Markets program. We have surveyed all of the farmers that, or those that are willing to participate, survey farmers that sell in one of the 53 green market markets. The interesting thing about green markets is, you know, they really focus on, you know, improving financial returns to the producers that they have, providing local healthy food access. This is their region of, if they say, you know, this is how far you have to be from New York to be able to sell here. But they also have a very particular mandate that talks about creating viable civic spaces where people shop, interact, and learn. Okay, so part of their mission gets on to that rural wealth creation part that we did. So before we did multi-regional, we started with single region estimates of the impact of that, which is basically green market spending plus the farm spending of those who sell at the markets, right? And this gets interesting in the sense of, if I took all of the farms that sell there and include the spending and stuff that regional does, you come up with about an impact of those activities, or contribution technically, of about $565 million, over 4,000 jobs. Now the issue is, how much do you count of that farm that's selling at green markets, but it's not all of their sales? Should we count only the sales? You ask some of the farms that we surveyed, they say, I'd be out of business if I didn't have green markets. Now, that is an argument for saying I should count all of their activity, right? So that's why we have this range. 1,100, 4,200 jobs. Still significant. So the question that we're working on now is trying to measure the differences in linkages of those type of producers, say in upstate New York, versus the buyers, primarily consumers here in New York City, right? So we're trying to adjust some of these trade flows. We have some issues that we're trying to deal with in terms of, well, most of these flows are going through households, direct-to-consumer sales, so how can we distribute those effects? So hang on, more is coming on that one, but it'll be interesting to see the feedback between the rural and the urban regions and whether it makes a difference. Last thing, so now we're working on the other stuff, right, that nobody can quantify. To think about this broader set of impacts of social and intellectual and natural capital, right? The preservation of open space and farmland that people value. Well, that's impact, right? So how do you put that in the concert of how many jobs you create is a tougher thing to do, particularly on a short-run basis. So we worked with Donna Ratner, thank you. I don't know why I did that. Yellowwood Associates, and had extension and research and extension advisory teams that help us to say, give us some idea of how we can develop an indicator or measurement, right, of intellectual capital or social capital. Right, so we worked through those, you know, and there's a lot of stuff going on, right? A lot of stuff. Here's the markets, the farmers come there, there's these impacts. This is just on intellectual capital that happened to the farms, which influences things in the rural area, which could come back and influence things in the urban area. Frankly, it makes my head hurt. So it's complicated, is my point, right? But very important. And so one of the things I want to show you as my last slide is, based on those advisory panels and some other literature, we developed an index or a stock of human capital in the Northeast, right? Sort of the stock of it's intellectual individual capital, technically. Think of stock of educated workforce, right? It's human capital. And we were able to estimate it by county. Actually did it for every county in the United States, but just the size of the number don't matter. It's the relative distribution of the numbers. Lighter is lower, darker green is higher, so you can all look at which county in New York is. Right? But what we want to do is that this is our estimate. Don't even think about green markets. This is our estimate of human capital in every county in the Northeast. If I go back and if I just look at New York State, okay? And I know where the green market vendors are from, you can get that from their website, I can actually compare, there's a lot here, don't worry about that. I'm not going to go through every number, but I'm going to just hit one. If you look at, okay, NYC is not New York City. So this is not New York City GM counties. So here's upstate counties that have GM, that have farmers that sell it in the green markets. Versus, oh yeah, no, look at this, this is more interesting. Versus counties upstate that don't have any GM vendors, right? This is just a means difference test. What you find is that those counties that have GM vendors actually have higher, on average, indexes of human capital than those without. I couldn't believe it. Right? I expect none of this will be statistically different, right? There's a lot of other things that influence human capital, but it's some preliminary evidence, and our hypothesis is the learning and things that come from those GM producers in an urban market go back to inform the other producers that they are interacting with in their rural area. Pretty awesome, huh? I have it cited somewhere on here. So, let me just finish with this. My whole point is to do these types of impacts right, and believe me, there's a lot of people that do them wrong. If you asked me this question 5 years ago, I was doing it wrong. Well, less right. I wouldn't call it wrong. So you just really need to have a thoughtful approach. You need to involve lots of people in your community. You have to make sure that these countervailing or opportunity costs are accounted for. My takeaway on the producer scale argument was, you know, what's the metric that matters? The food hub innovations, yes, we can see these differential impacts of food hubs, but make sure you don't exclude potential countervailing effects. On rural-urban linkages, we know that for those producers that sell in those produced markets, for local food producers, are by definition different, right? So trying to adjust and estimate differences in impact behind the scenes is really tricky. So ask me in a year, and I'll give you that, 6 months, a year, and I'll give you that answer. And the thing with rural wealth creation, this more encompassing view, what we're trying to do now is take those impacts on capitals and actually add in a model with all those financial impacts. But at least preliminarily showing, and we got it published, so I guess somebody is, right? That this urban market participation by producers positively influences the human capital stock back in their rural communities. Very cool. All right. Thank you.
One question for Todd, and then we'll have more time with the panel. Does anyone have one? Yep, right here. So I was just curious if you had an opinion on the efficacy of food policy or food systems councils on supporting the local farm. A lot of what you were talking about this weekend is actually taking farm products and bringing them to New York City through the food markets, but some of the things we're trying to do is connect more local food locally with schools and institutions and food justice and that sort of thing. I just wonder what your opinion was on the efficacy of that, and then, actually having, you're talking about grassroots committees and getting together locally, but mostly for the food hub. Have you worked with food policy councils or food systems councils or coalitions of that sort?
Yeah, one of the reasons for sort of our rural-urban focus in that last project was just by the matter of fact is where's most of the people, by definition in the urban area. So where's most of the food demand, by definition in the urban areas. Not to exclude the fact that can local people sell more locally and develop more things like social media capital on a local basis. We haven't looked at that yet. But it is a good idea. In terms of your earlier comment of actually thinking about things like local producers getting into their institutions or school systems, I will point you to an October 11th webinar that's going to talk exactly about that. If you're sick of me, I'm actually on it, but I'm not really talking about the farm to school stuff. I'm talking about how to do it right. So I'm sort of the nerd on the panel, but they are talking explicitly like that. There's some really interesting stuff that are just coming out of Colorado State that looked at those issues explicitly.
Great, thank you, Todd. And so we are going to have time in our panel to have more discussion about these issues. So we have done a community-based sort of strategy, understanding the impacts of these investments and from a research perspective, and how do we learn to leverage and think more broadly about impacts. And now we want to shift to thinking about policy and the ways in which all of us can influence and enhance investment in this type of a local food system infrastructure. And so I'm really excited and grateful to be able to introduce Donna Lupardo, who was elected in 2004 to represent New York State's 123rd Assembly District, which includes the city of Binghamton and the towns of Vestal and Union. And the Assemblywoman is an outspoken advocate for the Southern Tier and championing the area's continuing economic recovery. And in this vein, and among many other legislative initiatives, she's encouraged the state to revitalize its agriculture sector. And she's co-sponsored numerous pieces of legislation to grow the state's wine, spirit, cider, and beer industries. Thank you. And she's also been very successful in pushing for assistance for farmers and encouraging new farmers. So in 2014, she also authorized legislation to allow research universities to partake in a pilot research program around industrial hemp production. So that crop is poised to become a major driver for our state's agricultural industry. In her 13 years, she's received numerous awards and recognition for her continued commitment to public service. So we know of Donna's commitment to local regional food systems. We're excited to hear her perspective.
Thanks a lot. Hello, everybody. I know quite a few of you from our various work together, but it's exciting to meet new people today and get new perspectives. It's going to sound kind of funny, but I'm no food expert, but I play one in the legislature. And that comment underscores something important to know when you're dealing with your legislator. We come to this work from a variety of different fields. I spent 10 years teaching at the university, philosophy and psychology at Yale University. I spent 15 years after that doing community mental health education. And I got elected primarily because I felt that people who were in charge of rebuilding our local economy after the collapse of manufacturing were really missing the point on what would be needed to accomplish that. And what is needed to accomplish that, especially in places like the Southern Tier, is to have a balanced local and regional economy with food as one of the pivotal areas. Now, when the governor several years ago, 7 years now, formed the Regional Economic Development Councils, the Southern Tier formed a group of 8 counties who had never cooperated with one another before. I often say that from Broome County's perspective, Elmira might as well have been in Ohio. That's how we related to the counties around us. That insular nature kept us from progressing on issues like this. I want to give you, I'm trying to give you some broad picture, bigger picture background so you can see how you can perhaps be better advocates with the data that you have and the understandings that we just heard about. These councils forced these counties to come up with plans based on their regional strengths. And lo and behold, the Southern Tier Council designated food systems and these topics as one of the 4 top priorities, along with what you would have expected. Revitalization of downtown centers, advanced manufacturing, healthcare systems, and the like. This came as a revelation